It's Roger once again, Mud Fossil University, and today we are going to discuss Albert Einstein. And I have nothing against Albert Einstein, however, he is the problem with physics. He literally broke physics for the last 100 years, and it's because the physics elite is not capable of discussing with each other reality. Because all you have to do is say, let's examine Albert Einstein's statement about E equals mc squared, and you become attacked. Degrassi Tyson, or whatever his name is, he comes on TV, says, oh, you can't argue with E equals mc squared. He has no clue what E equals mc squared even means. E is energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, which the speed of light squared has nothing to do with it at all. It's just like add times 1, because it never changes. E equals mc squared means that energy equals the mass times this number. And Albert says there is no mass in light. You understand that? There is no mass in light. That means it has no energy. And not a single physicist will talk to me about this. All they will say is, oh, you just don't understand. And I can tell you for a fact I do not understand, and I would like them to make me understand, because there is no way to understand it as stated. Light has a mass, and here's exactly what happens. And Albert has destroyed physics, because now they're looking for dark, spooky, entangled things that just don't exist. And they cannot get to reality ever until they address this. When a sun spits out its rays towards the earth, which we know hits the earth and lights it up and heats it. It leaves the sun, we know it leaves the sun. There are solar sails, we know it pushes solar sails. There's a space station out here, we know it lights up the space station. What is happening is there is the electrons, which are negative particles. They shoot from the sun because they are shaken so hard they achieve escape velocity. They go out into space, and in space they now have no nucleuses to interact with. That means nothing to bounce off of. That means that they become dark. These electrons are now dark, floating through space until they enter and hit something that has a nucleus. And at that point, that nucleus and that cloud of electrons around the nucleus can shake to create heat, and it can bounce some off to create light. That is what's coming through space. This is the dark energy and the dark matter. It is not nothing. Einstein was completely wrong about his analysis of the particle nature of light. And the particle nature of light means that it has a weight and it has an energy. And now I will show you how it reacts in the ether of space, because it creates its own magnetic field identical to the same magnetic field of a wire. When an electron passes down a wire, it creates the identical same magnetic field. All right, we've done some research on light and looked at the actual light and manipulated it to some effect, and it seems like it is literally a liquid. Now, this is the red light from a pulsed red laser, and they come through in these sort of circular patterns. And you can see this, I believe, is what we're calling the ether. See the little dots? Every one of those is a particle, and it is affected by light as it passes those particles. Okay, this is what I am saying light is, and this is the way it spins forward. Now, this is going through a slot. All right, and it's a Venturi slot, which means it accelerates light, but that's not important here. As it spins through that slot, it's literally this. It's literally spinning like this, and that tip is the particle. And as it spins like this, it literally spins through the disk. So at the bottom of the disk, this will go that direction. And if it's depending on where it is hitting the disk, it will make these bumps. Now as it spins over and it goes out through this side, it creates this series of bumps, but you can see it's the spin. So this is the wave, and that is the particle. So it's literally spinning forward, and the particle is the electron. What you're seeing here is that disk, which we originally saw was would have been a normally rounded disk, coming forward and into our venturi, which is an acceleration device. It's two round pins, and as it enters that, it has to draw that in faster and harder. It compacts and explodes with power in here, and then it steps back down. So it has become concentrated, just like you do when you squirt water through the nozzle of a hose. It's identical. It's called atomization, and it works in a carburetor the same way. And as it hits the venturi, which restricts the flow, the only possible way for this to get through there is to speed up. And when it speeds up, it creates this high energy white. And we can see it radiating backwards now. You see this? That's the backward radiation from this impact. And again, this is all the ether. These little dots are all the ether becoming highly exposed now because it's in the magnetic field of this particle. This is looking down from above at the accelerator. As that light comes through the venturi, it is extremely energized and totally in chaos, and then it begins to reform a little bit, and it turns into its disks. Now you can see some of them are cutting back and forth across each other. That is the spinning effect. When they start to reform, they will end up being nice straight little shafts of spinning disk particles. All right, this is right after the accelerator right here, and as the electrons come through there spinning, they come into these trails. Now, occasionally some will be denser and some will be less dense. That relates to the color of the disk. That's the frequency and the density of the disk. You can see this is more chunky, and that one there's more spread out. Now, this is the one I want you to focus on. This particular particle has come through the accelerator as an extremely energetic particle, and when these type, they will interact with actual light particles. They don't have to hit, they can actually interact with light particles and create mini light particles, and I will show you that. Right, this is a light trumpet. You see right there? I call that a light trumpet. It's a mini light disk. These are the disks we saw before. We know they come through, they're issued by the laser. They come through the accelerator, and they come through in these patterns. This particular one was the white one that I said. Here it is coming here and crashing into another disk here. And as it does, you can see the architecture of it. It starts to create its own disk. But apparently there was more energy than it was allowed in this disk, and it is giving off some light there. Now, this shows you so much in one shot. We see the disks, we see high energy disk, a high energy particle. We see that light, it can literally be divided. So this is so much wrong about light, and it's all because of Albert Einstein's dogma that says light has a certain speed. I showed you that that's totally wrong, absolutely incorrect. Light does not have a speed limit or a set speed. Secondarily, light is a particle. It's not a nothing. It's not a wave. It's not an electromagnetic wave. It is a particle going through space, creating its own magnetic field. And now I'm going to explain that. As light travels down a wire, it travels down a wire, and the rule is that the direction of this is called a right hand rule. Here's your right hand. You wrap it this way, and it goes in that direction. It means the lines are turning in this direction. If you go in this direction, the lines are turning in this direction. Now, I can see those lines turning, and I will show you those in midair, because a particle moving in midair is identical to a particle moving in a copper wire. There is no difference whatsoever. None. They both create the same identical magnetic field which wraps around that particle as it passes in these series of lines. And I will show you that in air with an actual particle. This tells the story. Each one of these is a particle coming out of our accelerator. As they come out, they spin to the right, just exactly what I said, the right-hand rule. And you can see it's wrapping as it goes, and it's drifting to the left because it's spinning to the right. Think about it. It's spinning to the right. That means the left. The particle itself shows off drifting to the left. Now, we saw it come through the accelerator in a highly accelerated state, and the distances between the particle showing begin to compress out here. So the particle has been accelerated, it's spinning, and it is now compressing as it gets further away from the accelerator. Now, I'm going to show you what Harvard did. We sent this research to everybody in physics, MIT and all of them, and Harvard and Stanford and Yale and all of them, but nobody ever responded. But this we did see. All right, we sent this and all kinds of other information to all the universities, virtually every single one. Not a single response came back. However, I see that Harvard has literally got the exact same pictures as ours. I mean, it's literally the identical same pictures. Only what they did was, instead of putting it through a single orifice, they put it through this, which is a grid. It's like a screen, and has all these different little squares in there. So instead of getting a singular, nice little, easy to see pattern like we have, they got this blob coming out. But it does show blip, 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 just like ours. And then it shows as you get further away from the center, you get the same thing that we have. Same, exact, identical. Not even a smidge difference, only the color. Okay, last statement on this. I've shown that light is a particle coming through space. There's no question about it. It's dark energy and dark matter in the vacuum of space until it interacts and becomes light and heat. There is no option there. There is none. Secondly, I showed that light can be divided. Light can be accelerated. Light is a particle. Light is a spinning disk. Light turns to the right as it spins, and it compresses after it goes through our Venturi. And now I'm going to show you actually light creating its own magnetic field in the ether. This is a good shot of a particle. This is the particle spinning away from the acceleration. As it spins away, it's creating its own magnetic field and stimulating the ether around it as it passes through that ether to display itself as the magnetic field. It's the same thing we saw with the blue, only this is a highly magnified and shows the single particle. We've captured some of these particles actually in space, and here's two of them right here. They end up coming through the accelerator, and they wind down for a short distance, and then they stop almost and lock in position, and you can see the particles, and then they begin to restructure down to their spinning disks. Now I'll show you a couple other different shots of this. All right, that's the actual particle as far as we can determine. And you can see that there's it looks like there's a spinning torus type thing here and a spinning torus type thing here. There's a spike coming up and a spike coming down. That's what we see. Now, I have a theory possibly that this is a torus, and the neck of the torus is the restriction which creates a choke effect on the magnetic field, and as it pours into the choke neck, it creates a field against that flow to oppose it. It's called capacitive reactance, or no, as inductive reactance. Now, when it shoots that energy back into the void of the torus, That's called capacitive reactance, and it pulls it back in there easily. But then as it goes back around and hits the choke of the neck again, it opposes it and forces it back violently. Up to 10 times the forward motion, it reverses itself. And that somehow is making a flip-flop. That's, I don't have the answers here to everything. I'm showing you pictures and things and trying to understand what's going on. Obviously, I don't have every single detail. I'm not. I don't have any of the resources these people have that are making all these claims, trying to prove Einstein. And they can't. There's no way they can prove Einstein. Absolutely, it's just a fool's mission to try to continue on down that road. They have to at least have to say, okay, look at what this guy said. What is a particle in space? I mean, what is it, nothing? I mean, come on. And then they come, we got to find a dark energy. We can't find it. Well, you got to open your eyes. All right, as always, Mud Fossil University up on YouTube. That's where you're going to find all of this stuff. And I have dozens of videos on the ether, on light, and on energy, and on sonoluminescence, and on anti-gravity, and on levitation, and all of that stuff. Everything. Soup to nuts. Soup to nuts. Go up there, look into this, because I have the information that we have uncovered is actually amazing. And especially when you get to things like this right here. People send me things all the time. Now, let me just shut this down and I'll watch. You see that? That is a light disk. And watch what happens to that light disk as it comes into the earth and it actually, look at that. It actually hits the earth. You see that? Boom. You see that? That is a light disk. It is an extremely powerful light disk. They don't all come down little bitty bits of light. That one, I can't explain how it could have gotten through so powerful, but it is obviously what it is. So that's all I can say is what I say I'm seeing, you are seeing. You saw my light disk. You see this one interacting with the ground, and you can actually see behind it. You see it? It's come down and swooshing into the earth. This is what we do. Now, there's nothing that you can, and you can see up there, it's coming from outer space. Something happened on the sun, or whatever happened, forced that disk to be much stronger than the others. There's a lot to look at here. So go to Mud Fossil University, enjoy yourself, but start to understand about the reality of our life, and about the things that are being avoided because of the dogma and about peer pressure. It's got to stop.